We are exploring the science of mind, and it's about using it. Using it. So our theme for this month is living the science of mind, and our book is that book, Living the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. And of course, last week we talked about what the science of mind was. We talked about its underlying beliefs that we're all spiritual beings, that we're living in a spiritual universe, and that the mind we use is the mind of God. The mind we use is the mind of God. That is, we're all sharing this consciousness of creation continually. And as Ernest Holmes used to say when he had his radio program, he used to always say, there is a power for good in the universe and we can use it. There's a power for good in the universe and we can use it. So there's a power for good in the universe called electricity. And it's been around forever, but we didn't know how to use it until, really the late 19th, early 20th century. We played with it. We had static electricity, and we used to run around and shock people with it and, make little light things, and we played with it. But eventually we discovered how to use it. But it didn't really have any, we didn't really understand that it was useful until we understood the principles of it, how it worked, how we could use it in wires, what the resistance was, all of these different things that we discovered. This is the scientific method where we take something and we figure out how it works. And then we figure out how to use it. And so the process of figuring out what it is, how it works, and how to use it is a very messy process. It didn't come overnight. A lot of people were trying a lot of things, and there's a lot of failure along the way. But the thing is, the experiments fail. We try something, we have a theory, maybe this would work. We try it, and sometimes it fails. Now, the important thing about that is we have to remember that failure is an essential part of creation. We try something and it fails. In Sweden, I understand, or in Swedish, I understand that there's the word, having failure as a verb, but it's not a noun. There's no such thing as a person being a failure. It's not a noun. It's only a verb. You have the experience of failure, but that doesn't make you a failure. That's a big distinction. So in our lives, part of the problem is that we are these spiritual beings, and we have this power of the universe, which is the power of love and the power of intelligence. And the power of love is who and what we are, and the power of intelligence says, how are you going to use your love today? That is what it says to us. How are you going to use your love today? But the problem is that when we were growing up, we didn't realize that our thoughts were connected to this infinite mind, and that our thoughts were powerful, that our thoughts would be creating our reality. As the Buddha says, with our thoughts, we make the world. But we weren't told that, or at least I wasn't. And I know that we came up with these ideas of unworthiness. That we weren't worthy, or we weren't deserving of good, or there was something wrong with us. I remember, and I've told you this before, where I got this report card that had like 7 A's and 1 B. And my dad says, well, what's with the B? There was no acknowledgement of the 7 A's. There was just the, you are a disappointment energy. You are not good enough. You are not good enough. And, and then in the Catholic Church, of course, we had this ritual where we banged on our heart and said, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. Whoa! What a powerful, terrible thing to be doing to people. I don't know if they still do that, but I hope not. But they do? Oh my goodness. Well, the problem is that is a lie. We are worthy because we are each individualized incarnations of that one life, that one spirit, that infinite divine is present in us. And it did not come here to feel unworthy. It did not come here to experience lack and limitation. It came to experience joy and love and beauty and harmony and goodness of every kind. That's what we were incarnated for. But we were told a bunch of lies. Then maybe we stumbled across the truth and we realized that our thoughts had power. But that was terrifying. For me, I came to this teaching and it was like, oh my God, what I think really matters. Now the thing about that is we have like 60,000 thoughts in a day. What am I going to wear? Oh, this coffee tastes terrible. Blah, blah, blah. We have all these thoughts, but they're not really, creating anything. But sometimes these thoughts are coming from the collective consciousness. That is, in that infinite mind, we're connected to that infinite consciousness of every human thought that's ever been thought. This collective consciousness is also in there. So we're never responsible, we're not really responsible for the very first thought that pops in. Because sometimes that thought that pops in is a hateful thought, is a discouraging thought, is a thought that we don't want to have. So we get to say, cancel, cancel. When we have that thought that pops in, and we say, where did that come from? We do not tweet it out to the world. We say, we say, whoa, wait a minute. Whoa, Nelly. I heard the guy just died who invented that phrase, whoa, Nelly. Anyway, so we stop. And we say, cancel, cancel. And we replace that with the thought that we do want to have. We replace it with that thought that I am one with all of these people. I am one with this situation. I am one with the power of love. And how can I bring love to this situation? How can I think more loving thoughts every day? How can I do that? And just be open to the question, be open to the experience every single day. We are all here by the power of good to do good, but not at anyone else's expense. Not at anyone else's expense. Do no harm. We have to remember there's not some big guy in the sky who is saying, oh, I'm going to give you a disease and I'm going to give you the lottery winnings. And, there is no big guy in the sky. There is a principle like electricity. There's a principle of love and creativity and abundance and wholeness. And we're tuning in to that energy and figuring out how to use it for ourselves. Now, our founder, Ernest Holmes, studied the Upanishads, he studied the Vedas, he studied the Bhagavad Gita, he studied the Bible, of course, he studied the Talmud, he just studied everything, looking for a scientific method of prayer. And so he talks about, in this Science of Mind book, he talks about finding the prayer of Jesus, when he's looking at the prayer of Jesus, he says, spiritual power is of no particular value to us until we use it. Just like electricity was no good until we used it. We must not only be conscious of this power, we must be actively conscious of it. So we have to remember that we can use it. This is one of the first lessons we learn in spiritual science. So that's where we are, spiritual science. This is one of the first lessons we learn. Okay, it is written that Jesus, standing before the tomb of Lazarus, said, "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always." So he was making that connection to the infinite. And they called it Father in those days because that's what people did. So he says, "I knew that thou hearest me always." He says, afterwards he gave the command, "Lazarus, come forth." So first he recognized the power. "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me." Next, he consciously unified himself with it. "And I knew that thou hearest me always." So he was saying, there is this power, and I am one with it. I know that you hear me always. And then he made a declaration, a command. Lazarus, come forth. And then that was what he calls conscious acceptance. He consciously accepted the truth of what he was saying. He said, "We could not find a better method for our own mental use of spiritual thought power, since the whole process of spiritual treatment is an activity of thought. It follows that the one thinking must be consciously aware that his treatment will be effective." So it has to do with conviction, our conviction that our word has that power. He says, "Although we are surrounded by divine intelligence, love, and wisdom, we may lack an actual higher guidance because we lack the acceptance of such guidance. Daily we should state that we are guided and directed into right action. We should know that there is an intelligence which goes before us and makes perfect, plain, and immediate our way. Divine guidance is as definite a principle in the universe as is the law of attraction and repulsion. But the use of divine guidance is what we make it." So the use of it is what we make it. So are we listening and are we acting? Our acknowledgement of good becomes the good which we acknowledge. Our acknowledgement of good becomes the good which we acknowledge. Okay, so we have to know that there's good. We have to know that there's divine intelligence. We have to know that something is making clear the way before us. But it's all about acceptance. How much can we accept? Especially if we're feeling that we're unlovable and unworthy and we're not good enough and blah, 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 blah. How much good can we accept? Because we can receive only that which we can accept. So the question always is, how big is the container of your acceptance? Is it this big? Can you accept that much? Is that enough good? That was good, but maybe we want a little more. Okay, so we have a little bit more. I am good enough to have a whole cup of good. I will take it. And then, how about a mug of good? I could take a whole mug of good. Woohoo! Watch out. And then, a bowl of good. We could get bigger and bigger and bigger. We could get another broader bowl of good. I'm going to spread out and get more good. And then I could get, a big old bowl of good. We get to decide how much good can we accept. And it really is something to think about. When I think about people who have homes like Oprah, this huge mansion, I would not want that for anything. You know how much staff you have to run a house like that? That means you're a manager. You have to manage staff. You have to hire and you have to fire and you have to, evaluate people and blah, 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 blah. Now, I don't mind having a lady who vacuums my house. That's great. But, I don't want that much. That's not the good I want. That's not my good. Now, the thing about this is it's a science. And Ernest Holmes tells us about a science and a methodology that worked for him. But we have to take that methodology, try it out, and see if it works for us. And we can work with it. In other words, he teaches us a science and a craft, and it's up to us to make it an art. It's up to us to see how we can really use our words with power. What is the word that is powerful for us? In that first part of a treatment, we are uniting with this infinite power, and so the feeling that we want to have is awe and wonder. And so in order to have that awe and wonder, those are the words we use. And it can be as simple as there's only one power in the universe. And just think of the night sky, the infinite stars. Just have that thought while you're saying whatever the words are. And what you want to go is for the feeling of awe and wonder. And then realize, and I am that. There's nothing outside of that. I am a glorious creation of this life as well. Me. This body is an amazing, amazing thing. The heart beats. I don't have to think about that. It digests food. It transforms matter into energy on a regular basis. I don't have to think about that. This body does that. It's a miraculous, miraculous vehicle for our soul journey on this planet at this moment in time. So, we go to the next step where we accept our good. So we decide how much good we want. Do we want a little bit of good, or do we want the big fat good? And what's the big fat good for us? Because that's a unique thing too. And the thing about it is we have to believe that our word has power. We have to have conviction and faith that that word is manifesting. Now the thing about it is it's an organic process. So when we plant that bulb back in November, we don't expect it to pop up the next day. We know that there's a cycle of growth involved. We know there's some nourishment that needs to happen. We know that it's going to live in the soil, and we also know that it will know where the sun is and how to get there. And it will be called through the darkness into the light. The bulbs are already coming up in our garden. All this warm weather is a little confusing. but the thing is, we are like that. Our ideas are things that we have planted in the mind of God, in this law of God that takes our thoughts and brings them into manifestation. It takes time, and sometimes it looks different than we thought it was going to look like. But we know it by how it feels, because we established that feeling when we made that declaration. In that declaration, we generated a feeling, the feeling of peace, the feeling of abundance, the feeling of love, the feeling of wholeness. Whatever it was, we had that feeling. And that's how we know when it shows up that that's it, because we have that feeling. And then we're grateful. We're grateful. And we just have to let it be. I mean, we don't dig the bulb up every other day to see how it's doing. We just let it go. We release it and let the earth do its work. And we have to let the law do its work as well. So, we are here to love. We are here to use this process of the science of mind to recognize that we're here to love and to declare our love and to expand our realization that we have the power and that we can use it by using these treatments. Now, the other thing is, it's interesting what he says about the difference between meditation. Oh, I have to tell you one little story. Fear gets in the way. Fear gets in the way. And Dina was telling me a story about this new show that's on called The Game of Games with Ellen DeGeneres apparently has this new game show. And part of this game show is that you're on a platform, and if you answer the question wrong, you are dropped. The floor goes out from underneath you, and you fall into this thing. So people are so terrified by the time they get up there of falling, they ask this woman, name a state in the United States that ends with A. Now, there are a lot of states that end with A. What did she say? Oregon. So fear just messes us up big time. It messes us up big time. So we need to remember, that love can overcome fear, where our love is stronger than any fear. And love doesn't have to be big. There is a wonderful little writing in this little book called The Book of Awakening by Mark Nepo. You've probably read it. He says, when I think of those, well, first of all, he has a quote, like the moon, come out from behind the clouds and shine. Like the moon, come out from behind the clouds and shine. That's what we're supposed to do. When I think of those who've taught me how to love, moments come to mind, not words. As far back as grade school, when Lori wouldn't stop spinning when recess ended, spinning to a deeper, higher call, she laughed her little head back, her arms wide, trying to hug the world. Then the day Kennedy was shot, there was my choir teacher, Mr. P., crying for a man he didn't know, letting us go home, but I came back to hear him play a sad piano to what he thought was an empty room. And Grandma holding my little hands open on her basement steps saying, these are the oldest things you own. Or the changing faces I would wake up to at the foot of my bed while recovering from surgery. Or my father-in-law watering black walnuts 6 inches high that wouldn't be fully grown for 150 years. Or my oldest friend who always listens like a lake. Though words can carry love, they often point to it. It is the picking up of something that has dropped and the giving of space for someone to discover for themselves what it means to be human, and the forgiving of mistakes when they realize that they are. So we are human, and we make mistakes, and failure is an absolute active part of this scientific process that we are exploring called the science of mind. And all of us are called to be who we are, to be the presence of love, to be a presence of good, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. So, let us say our affirmation together. There is a power for good, and I am using it for good. There is a power for good, and I am using it for good. There is a power for good, and I am using it for good. There is a power for good, and I am using it for good. And let us say our sacred prayer today for our new minister. And hopefully that will come up. Yes. There is only one life. This life is good. This life is God. This life is my life now. I'm knowing that I am one with this life that is God. I therefore know that I am one with all of its blessed expressions, which includes the presence of a new minister for my beloved spiritual community. Because I know that the highest purpose of my new minister is to glorify God, I therefore know that my new minister is a revelation of God as unity. I further know that my new minister is the fulfillment of that which is promised by God, for it is written, "So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth." As I stand in agreement with my beloved community, I see my new minister revealed before me as empowering our thriving spiritual community. I experience my new minister in full cooperation and agreement with my community, knowing this truth about myself, for I am inspired to live in unity as an expression of love. I am awakened to wisdom within. I am embodying the consciousness of wholeness in community and organizational well-being. I am open to mystical teachings that illuminate the science of mind principles. I am supporting my minister to be a loving and beneficial presence in the greater community in support of social activism. As I now accept the highest expression of a new minister into my life, I know that they will be revealed in a way that will glorify God and serve the highest and greatest good of all who are touched by their presence. I am grateful God is gracious, and so it is. Amen.